Morning, guys. How's everyone doing? Good to see you all here. Karibuni sana. Welcome to the Afriforex daily analysis on this 10th day of July, the year of our Lord 2024. Good to see lots of familiar names here, names that we've definitely seen before so many times here. Karibuni sana. Hope that you guys are well. Hope that you had a good time on the chat yesterday and in everything else that you're doing, but we're really glad that you could join us this beautiful, chilly morning. So we're going to jump straight into it, and we're going to be looking at what we had on the charts yesterday in comparison to what we did have or we do have today. And of course, for the sake of guys who are new here, we do this each and every morning, by the way, from 9 a.m. in the morning till about around 10 or thereabout. So it's an analysis session where we do this free of charge. John is my name. Mitch will be joining us in a bit. But feel free to send us your questions, both on the Q&A section and also on the chat box. We'll definitely be getting back to you. But we always do prefer that you do send us your questions in the Q&A section, so at least I can also end up having a look at them sometimes towards the end of the session. But remember, you don't need to wait until the very end of the session. You still can ask your questions even as the webinar does end up progressing on. So as you can see right there, the watch list for today is more or less the same as what we did have yesterday. There isn't any change. Remember that yesterday there weren't that many fundamentals, and even the ones that came out didn't really end up changing anything much on the charts. So that's the reason why you're seeing that things are more or less the same. So that means that we can start off by looking at screenshots. We actually did end up getting one. Maybe yesterday guys were not really trading that much, but it's still fine. So we did get a screenshot from Ravin. So this is on silver. So we know that you love trading silver. Seems like you got a really good sell on it somewhere within this region right here. I know that yesterday silver and gold were more or less opposite ends. We're watching out to see whether we could have gotten some buying opportunities on silver, but we did also point out that you could possibly find some sellers coming in, especially considering the move that had happened the day before. So this was really good. Good to see that at least you got the sell within some sort of a seller's region. Stop loss not yet within your point of entry, but just above that, which is okay. Hopefully you did manage your trade somewhere within this region. Was definitely a region where we do have buyers, and I think that the market did possibly end up giving some sort of a pullback of that region right there. So this was really good. So shout out to you for that. Bravin. And of course, remember, guys, can always send us your screenshots. Remember, it's not even a matter of it being a competition. It's just a matter of just trying to see what you guys are up to on the charts. So if you get any trades, whether good or bad, feel free to send them in to us. You know, that's the reason why we are here. Use us as some sort of a resource. At least we'll give you the much needed feedback that you want. And remember that in terms of you sending in the screenshots, and there are very many people who are also watching here, that means that the problem that you're facing would be something that cuts across so many people. And, you know, by you sending in the screenshot, then at least by the advice that we give you, that will also end up helping so many other people who also do end up watching this show each and every morning. So you can send them in to us. Contact details, I'm sure most of you do have them, but we will be putting them in the chat box in a bit, but you can send them in to us via WhatsApp. Us guys would be more than happy to see what you guys are up to. So we'll start off by looking at the AUD pairs. So we'll mix and match them up with everything on the sell side, then move on to the Euro pairs, then the USD pairs, just like we always do. And since the watch list is the same, then that means that we're also going to be doing the reviews and the recaps of what happened yesterday based on the analysis that we had as we continue moving along. So the first one off the line is the Australian dollar against the Swiss franc. So for this one yesterday, we were trying to see whether we could have gotten some buying opportunities. And you can see the three regions right there that I had pointed out. In the morning, when we're looking at the charts yesterday, price was somewhere within this area right here. I did point out that this was not a good time for you to look for your buying opportunity. And you clearly can't see why now. I pointed out that it was best to wait and see if you could get the market breaking above this region to the upside. If it broke and held above that, then we could have possibly tried to see whether we could have jumped in on some buying opportunities. But you can't see that the market did pull back. This was during the London session. During the US session, the market came back in within here at least if we did attempt buys off this area right here, that would have been much better. The only problem was that yesterday the Swiss franc pairs were not really moving. In fact, it's something that we'll end up seeing when we end up looking at the rest of the CHFs. You'll see that there was a lot of inactivity yesterday. I don't know if the inactivity is going to continue throughout the week, because the problem that we have is that there are no CHF news events the whole of this week, which is quite odd. But I guess we'll just have to wait and see if the big boys are going to be showing up anytime soon, because all indications are saying that they should be showing up in terms of, dumping the Swiss franc. So let's see what happens on this one. But you can see that the market has started to more or less hold within this region. The buyers did show up, then some sort of non-committal within the Asian session. The Frankfurt session has just begun. Let's see what happens. But remember that the best buys are still somewhere within this region right here. So maybe during the London session or maybe during the US session, you could possibly find that the market could potentially end up attempting to lift, off this region to the upside. So just make sure that you do keep your eyes out for that. Remember the red SNR at the bottom. If the market does end up coming all the way down to within that region, then also that's an area where you could potentially try and see whether you could get, your buying opportunities. So the next one is the Australian dollar against the Canadian dollar. So for this one yesterday, we're trying to see whether we could have gotten some buying opportunities. And you can't see the three regions that I had pointed out. You can't see that the market was more or less stagnant within their same levels that we're going to be watching out for today. And yesterday I had pointed out that maybe we wanted to see the market maybe spike, beneath this region to the downside, come back in and hold. And that's exactly what it did. In fact, if we were to move this somewhere within this area right here, you can see that the market broke to the downside. And right now it's actually when the market is actually literally holding, more or less attempting to go to the upside. I don't know if any of you were on the chart at around 4 a.m. in the morning, because it seems like that's when the market did come back in within this region to move to the upside. But don't chase. I know that sometimes, especially when you see an opportunity that you had possibly waited for and the market starts to make a move, and you start to feel some sort of FOMO, the fear of missing out, and you start jumping in on the trades late, it can actually end up costing you. Right now, if you end up looking at where the market is, you can see that there's some sort of an SNR within this region. So the market is in some sort of a range. So don't hit the buying opportunities right here, because what you could potentially find is that the market could potentially end up still coming back in within this region. So we have this small range within these two major areas right here. So if the market does end up coming back in, within this region, I mean, if the market is in a range, the best area for you to look for your buying opportunities is always at the bottom of the range. So if the market comes back in, within that region at the bottom, then ideally you could potentially get a really good buying opportunity. So that even if the market gives you issues within this area, even if you're targeting higher up within here, you can still do some sort of money management within that area and you still benefit. So just make sure that you watch out for that. And of course, depending on how good you are in trading, if the market breaks above here, if it pulls back in within this region, you could potentially try and look for a buy within here. But I think that one is more for guys who are more advanced on the charts, because the risk to reward here might be a bit tricky to get. So it's just a matter of just making sure that, it's better for you to possibly end up either waiting for the market to break that region to the upside. If it does end up breaking this particular region to the upside, then we could potentially try and see whether we could resume, with the buying opportunities to push the market to the upside. So just make sure that you watch out for that. But of course, the best area to look for your buying opportunities is definitely somewhere within here. But also keep an eye out for this region at the bottom right there. Seems like a long shot, but remember, like we always keep on pointing out, there's no price that's too far, for the FX market. You still could find the market coming back in within that region. So the next one is the Australian dollar against the New Zealand dollar. So for this one, yesterday we were also watching out to see whether we could have gotten some buying opportunities. And you can see the three areas that I had pointed out in the morning before you even look at what happened today. So you can see that in the morning price was somewhere within here. I had pointed out that maybe you could find the market coming back in within this region to potentially end up getting a buy. And you can see that during the London session, at around 4:30, price did come back in within this region. If you took the buy, I mean, you just needed to possibly end up managing within this region right here. You can see the market came back in within this region and took off, to the upside quite aggressively. This was due to some New Zealand dollar interest rate decisions, that came out at around 5. So if you end up looking at all the NZDs, you literally see that they did actually end up making some massive moves, in terms of weakness. So if you did get the buys and you did hang on somehow, then I think today you woke up with some really, really good profits. So shout out to you for that. So for this one for today, we're still going to be watching out to see whether we can get buying opportunities. And this one, and more or less all the New Zealand dollar pairs, caution is advised. Reason being, you can see that the markets have really moved up quite aggressively. And obviously, so many people, 95% of the traders in the world are definitely trying and attempting to jump in on buys. But what you normally find, especially, just based on experience and what we've seen on the charts, especially when the market makes some massive moves like this, you could find that the market could be stuck within this region. And of course, as many people are hitting buys, are thinking that the market could go higher up. Of course, it could. We're not saying, or I'm not saying that it can't. Yes, it can. But you just need to be cautious about it, because you could find that the market could literally be pulling back. And as many people are actually attempting buys, the market could keep on moving further and further down. And you could find the market backing within this region, maybe even all the way down to within this area. Like we've seen so many times when interest rate decisions do come out and the markets end up really moving, but they also still end up pulling back equally aggressive. So just make sure that you're really watching out. Don't really end up chasing buying opportunities right now, like the 95% of what the traders are doing right now. You can't see that the market came up aggressively within this region. And the market was actually stopped and turned somewhere within here, which means that whoever stopped and turned these big boys who pushed the market to the upside is possibly somewhere still sitting within this region right here. So the best thing is to either wait for the market to break to the upside of this region. If the market pulls back in within here, then you could look for those buying opportunities. And at least if you end up taking that buy, it might be a bit better. But just watch out, maybe for this region right here, you could find the market pulling back in within here before the buyers do end up attempting, but also this region right here. The reason why we have that red SNR there is because if you end up going up a higher time frame to the 1 hour time frame, you'll end up getting more context. Consider the market breached this region to the upside quite aggressively. So there's a possibility, based on how the markets normally tend to move, there's a possibility you could find the market also coming back in all the way to within this region right here. And that's the reason why we have that. So let's wait and see what happens. You could find the pullback happening maybe all through the London session, maybe during the US session. You could find the market back in this region, or maybe somewhere within here. If it breaks to the upside, well and good. We'll just have to wait and see if we can get that pullback coming in. But of course, remember, if it breaks above, below rather, the red SNR to the downside, then at that point in time, it's better off to possibly just wait. If it comes back to the upside, you could look for those buying opportunities. Unless you're really highly skilled and you have some good experience on the charts, maybe to get those extremely aggressive entries, at the bottom of the red SNR, I would best advise that if you're still learning and trying to get your way through the charts, don't attempt such kind of a trade. It might end up leading you in the wrong direction in terms of, your cash and everything just going. So just make sure that you really do watch out for that. So looking at the next one, this is the Great British Pound against the Australian dollar. So for this one, yesterday, we were trying to see whether we could have gotten some selling opportunities. And you can see the three regions right there that I had pointed out in the morning. So the aggressive, conservative, semi-aggressive, conservative here. In the morning when we were looking at the charts yesterday, remember the market had just come back to the downside of this region. They pointed out maybe you could get a sell within there with stops there for the market to come down. And you can see that the market came down. This was during the London session, but it just came shy of this region right here and just turned so aggressively to the upside. But remember, I pointed out that this was an aggressive and also a very risky trade, because ideally you was trying to put your stop losses a bit there to get a proper risk to reward. But I pointed out that you could also find that the market could spike to the upside and it could easily end up getting taken out. And if that happens, then you could look for the entries, closer to this region right here. And you can see that the market came in within that region, and during the US session, you can see that from around 4:30, the market came to the downside quite nicely all the way till within this region right here. So for this one for today, we're going to be still watching out to see whether we can get some selling opportunities, and watch out for these three regions right here. We've adjusted them slightly. The market hasn't really gone far and beyond the areas that we had pointed out yesterday. But ideally, we have adjusted them. If I think you end up going up to the 1 hour time frame, what you'll end up realizing is that the market is in some sort of a range. So you can see that the top of the range is somewhere within this region right here. We had it somewhere within there, but just minor adjustments. But generally, somewhere within this region, you should definitely find some good selling opportunities. You can't see that the buyers are somewhere within this area. So also just a slight adjustment to what we had yesterday, but ideally somewhere within this region right here. So you can see that it's very clear cut and very clear, especially on the 1 hour time frame, compared to the way it looks like some sort of a choppy mess on the 15-minute time frame. So don't look for selling opportunities rather right now, considering the fact that we're at the bottom of the range. Wait and see if we can get the market breaking to the downside and a nice strong breach to the downside. Maybe if the market pulls back nice and slow within this region, then you could potentially try and see whether you could resume with those selling opportunities, after we get that breach of structure. So right now, let's wait and see what happens if the buyers do react, and let's say we find the market either coming back in within this region, or at least somewhere within this area, as close as possible within there, maybe during the US session, then you could potentially find some really good selling opportunities. So just make sure that you do watch out for that. I know that some of you just looking at this market structure, you may be wondering, okay, if we're going to be looking for selling opportunities and we're in a range, why not look for the buys? Well, you can end up looking for the buys. It's just that I think more caution would be advised on that one, because generally the sellers are still very much in control. So you can see that the sellers, if you look at how quickly the market came down within here and how the buyers are really struggling to push the market to the upside, if you end up taking the buys, it's not that they can't work, but there's a possibility you might really struggle with that trade. So it's always best to take the easier option. So you could possibly end up wait and see what happens, with the market, rather than you taking a trade whereby it's just going to be moving. Even if it moves to the upside, it might end up moving in a very slow manner, and it might end up giving you some emotional, take you through some emotional turmoil, which is not really necessary. So it's not really that necessary to end up signing up for that. When it comes to trading, patience is key. And most of you, I know you've possibly had us say this or maybe elsewhere in other trading forums, but patience when it comes to trading is always very, very important. The best trades don't just show up. Like, you really, really, really need to be patient, and I know that when we all came into trading, even I myself included, we all came into this industry thinking that we're going to make a lot of money. But ideally, when you come to the charts, you realize that things don't actually move as fast as you think. In fact, when you're in a rush to make money, what you don't realize is that you're actually in a rush to actually lose money and give it off, to the people who know what they're doing on the chart. So patience is always advised. Make sure that you're waiting for the right setups, the right trades. You're going to be taking a trade, better have a good reason as to why you're taking the trade. Don't just take it out of, your feelings or anything of the sort. It should always be as a matter of, a plan that you do end up following. So moving on into the last AUD pair. So this is the Australian dollar against the Japanese yen. So for this one yesterday, we're watching out for buying opportunities. You can't see the three regions that I had pointed out. In the morning, the market was somewhere within here. So just pulling around here, I did point out that there was caution, because you couldn't really have known how the buyers, or rather the sellers, were going to react. Really hoping that the market could come back in at least somewhere as close as possible within here or maybe here, but unfortunately we couldn't get that. And consider the market just pulled around within this region, broke to the upside, did a quick pullback. Unless you're reading that on the smaller time frame, and you can see that the market technically just ran off to the upside. So for this one, we're going to be waiting to see if we can get the market at least coming back in somewhere within this region right here. More or less, it's within some sort of resistance area, so it's not really that good to look for the buys right now. Wait and see if you can get the market there, or maybe somewhere within this region right here. But at least the Japanese yen can end up getting maybe some sort of strength, fighting back to at least pull the market back in within this region or this region right here. So just wait for that. In case that doesn't happen and the market breaks to the upside, wait for the pullback within here, and we could resume with those buying opportunities. So one thing you'll end up realizing about the yens is that, in fact, if I even go, I think on the daily or something, you'll end up realizing that most of the yens are actually at the highest they've ever been. So there's a lot of weakness that's happening on the yens. The government has tried to intervene, to try and give it some strength, but unfortunately, it's like the interventions are just not working. Like the yen is really getting dumped. Don't know if we can get the monthly chart on this one, but the yen is really getting dumped all over the world. So a lot of weakness, even when the news events do end up coming out positive for the yen, and you should be expecting that maybe we could be buying the yen. The yens are technically just continuing to move to the upside. So interesting times that we're seeing. But of course, let's see what happens on this one within these three areas right here. And of course, you do get some good buying opportunities. Make sure that you do take advantage of that. So that's pretty much it for the AUD pairs. So let's look at the Euro pairs right now. And we're going to mix and match them up with everything on the sell side. So we'll start off with the Euro against the Swiss franc. So for this one, yesterday we were trying to see whether we could have gotten some buying opportunities. You can see the three regions right there that I have pointed out. And in the morning, when I'm looking at the charts, price was somewhere within here. I did point out caution in terms of looking for the buys there. The best here to at least attempt some buying opportunities would have been here. But unfortunately, the Swiss franc pairs, remember, like I pointed out, there's really nothing much happening for the Swiss franc pairs this week. No news events. And you can see that also for this one, pretty much dead, just like we saw on the Australian dollar against the Swiss franc. But we'll still be waiting to see. In case the big boys do end up showing up, then at least we will be ready. So just make sure that you watch out for these three areas right here. In case the market starts to make a move, you could look for some buying opportunities within here. Just make sure that you really do watch out for the region at the top. And the market comes back in within that area, make sure that you're ready to do some money management. So right now, considering the fact that the market is holding beneath this region to the downside, don't look for buying opportunities just yet. Wait and see if you could get the market breaking above here to the upside. If it does that, especially a nice strong breach, to the upside and the market pulls back in within here, then you could ideally look for your buying opportunity. Hopefully, this would have incited, a lot of people to end up jumping in on their selling opportunities. And at least if that ends up being the case, then I guess those are the guys who are going to be funding us today. So just make sure that you do watch out for that. Also watch out for this region right here, especially considering the fact that the market has broken and it's holding to the downside. You never really know if these sellers could literally push the market to the downside of this region right here, or rather the sellers. If that happens, and let's say all through the London session, the market is on the pullback phase, you could find that maybe at around 4:30, if the market is back in within here, then you could potentially try and see whether you could get those buying opportunities working off that region right there. So just make sure that you watch out for that. Remember the red SNR, in case the market breaks that region to the downside, then unfortunately there will be no trade for us unless the market breaks to the upside of that region once again. So the next one is the euro against the Canadian dollar. So for this one, yesterday we were watching out for buying opportunities, although you will also see that the euros yesterday, the strength wasn't really coming through. I know we're expecting strength to come in, but unfortunately yesterday it didn't really quite end up coming through, but we'll wait and see, and we'll keep our fingers crossed and see if that ends up happening today. So you can see this one, the three areas that I had pointed out yesterday. In the morning, price was somewhere here. I had pointed out that there was this level right here, but there was also this region somewhere within here where we did want to possibly end up seeing some sort of an incitement. And if the market held above here, then we could have possibly looked for the buying opportunities. But you can really see that the buyers really struggled. During the US session, from around 3, if you hit the buy there, we just couldn't get past this region, to the upside. And after that, you can see that the market broke to the downside. So for this one, the areas are more or less the same. Let me take out this blue level. So these three areas right here are the areas that we're going to be watching out to see whether we can get buying opportunities. And also areas where we will potentially be trying to see whether we can manage our trades. So right now, similar situation, I think, to the other one we looked at. The market has broken to the downside. Don't look for your buying opportunities right now. Wait and see if you can get the market breaking above here to the upside, just like we discussed on the other one. If that ends up being the case, a nice strong breach to the upside and a hold, wait at least for the market to hold within here, then ideally you could potentially end up attempting your buying opportunity at that point in time. At least if you attempt the buy coming up to within here, then you do keep your stops anywhere within here, at least that trade should give you some decent risk to reward. So watch out for that, but also keep an eye out for this region, especially considering the fact that the market is holding to the downside of this area. You could find that during the London session, the market could be on the pullback phase, come back in within here. Then maybe these buyers who push the market up quite aggressively, this was on Friday, could potentially end up doing the job for us and possibly push the market all the way to the top within this region. So just make sure that you're watching out for that. Also remember to watch out for the times, like we keep on mentioning, 10, 3, and 4:30. You could potentially find some good trading opportunities within that time, within the first hour or within that hour rather. So of the market session open, could potentially find some good opportunities at that point in time. So just make sure that you watch out for that. So the next one is the euro against the New Zealand dollar. So for this one, yesterday we were watching out for buys, and you can see the three regions right there that I had pointed out. In the morning, price was somewhere within here, so at around 9:10. And I did point out that don't really look for the buys so close within here. You're better off looking for the buys somewhere within this region right here. If the market breaks to the upside of this region, and you can see that the market pulled back in within this region right here, but it was pretty much dead during the US session. But today, during the Asian session, after the New Zealand interest rate decisions came out, you can see that the market really took off to the upside quite aggressively. So for this one is more or less similar to the Australian dollar against the New Zealand dollar. So you can see that there's some good correlation. So the story on this one is more or less the same as what we discussed on the Australian dollar against the New Zealand dollar. So don't really end up chasing the buying opportunities right now. If you do, there's a high probability and a possibility that you're joining the 95. So wait and see if you could get the market breaking above here. If it does, then you could potentially look for those buying opportunities. If not, give these sellers the benefit of doubt. You could find the market coming back in within this region here, or maybe even somewhere within here. So just like we looked at on the Australian dollar against the New Zealand dollar, the fact that the market broke that region to the upside quite aggressively, you could find either the pullback coming back in within this region right here, or maybe somewhere within this region. So that's the reason why we also do have this region right here. Of course, you could look for buys down here, as the market comes down, because very many people, of course, will still be attempting buys. And if the buys are not working, so many people are so focused on this green candle right here. And they'll keep attempting buys and keep on getting stopped out. It's only when the market comes back all the way till within here and starts to break to the downside, that's when mentally people are switching to look for those selling opportunities. But make sure that you do keep your eyes on the ball. Of course, the entries down here are highly aggressive. Unless you're really good at trading and you have some good experience, I would advise that you possibly don't end up looking for those trades, especially if it comes down within there. But if you're really good at trading and you've had some good experience on the charts, you're really experienced, then you could potentially, jump in and attempt that trade. So looking at the next one, this is the euro against the Great British Pound. So for this one yesterday, we're watching out to see whether we could have gotten some buying opportunities. And you can see the three regions right there that I had pointed out. In the morning, price was somewhere within here. And I pointed out that let's wait and see if we could get the market either breaking to the upside of this region, or maybe the sellers could push the market back in within this region. Then maybe we could look for buying opportunities down within here. And you can see that the market came down. This was during the US session. If you look at the times at around 3, 4:30, that's when price was back in here. If you took and attempted the buys here, even if you kept your stops within this region, or if you're a real cowboy and kept them somewhere within here, you can see that that trade going up would have given you, some good risk to reward moving to the upside. So for this one, the levels are the same in as much as the price did move, but it's not really moved far and beyond the areas that we had discussed yesterday. So we're going to be watching out for those three areas right there. Don't look for the buying opportunities just yet. Wait and see if you could get the market breaking to the upside. There's a possibility it could, looking at how the buyers have come up within this region. And if you look at what the sellers are doing within here, technically the market is just ranging within here, which shows that there's more or less an inability, of the sellers to push the market to the downside, but still give them the benefit of doubt. Because if you hit the buying opportunities here, you still have to have your stop loss all the way down here for it to be safe. Anywhere within here, you could end up getting stopped out. So unless the market breaks above this region to the upside and clears that region, and we can visually see that the market has done that, you're better off not looking for the buys yet, because the London market is about to open in about 30 minutes or so. And you still could find that the sellers could still end up pushing the market to the downside in a choppy manner, just like they did yesterday. And you could find that the buys could still happen, still down within this region right here. So just be a bit patient. But ideally, at least it seems like the buyers have really held the sellers hostage, within their area. They can't really move. So it's a good sign for us, but you could find that maybe the market might not really come back in all the way to within here. You could find it coming back in maybe even within somewhere within this region right here. So just make sure that you also do watch out for that. But of course, if you're going to be looking for the buys within here, I would best suggest that if you're really experienced, then maybe look for the buys there so that at least you can get your stops tighter and maybe get some proper risk to reward, so that in case the market does end up giving you issues within here, even if you end up scratching that trade, you can still end up coming out with some good profit. So that one is a bit tricky, but of course, if it comes in lower, the better. The risk to reward to the upside ends up making way more sense. So just make sure that you do wait for that. And of course, remember, no matter what you do, always make sure that you always do trade with a stop loss. So looking at the last euro pair, this is the euro against the Japanese yen. So for this one yesterday, we were watching out for buys, and you can see the three regions right there that I had pointed out. And in the morning, when we're looking at the charts, price was somewhat down, coming down within. I did point out that this was a good area to look for the buys. And you can see that during the London session, so at around 10 or thereabout, price came back in within here. The buyers did end up pushing the market to the upside quite aggressively. Some sellers within here did end up attempting to hold the market hostage, but eventually you can see that the market did continue to the upside and actually tapped within this region right here. You can see that during the Asian session, the market has continued to move to the upside. So for this one for today, so yesterday at least it gave more or less like one good buy, and a clear one somewhere within here. This one within here, that pullback, not the clearest of them, but at least you can see that the market did continue moving to the upside and give us those higher highs and higher lows, which is what we wanted to see. So let's see today we can get a nice pullback, maybe coming back in within this region here. If we end up getting that, we could potentially end up looking for the buying opportunities within here. And also watch out for this region at the bottom. Seems like it's a bit far, but remember that when it comes to the chart, there's no price that's too far. So you still could find the market coming back within this region and potentially end up giving a really good buying opportunity. So don't look for the buys now. Wait and see if we can clear this region to the upside. If we can, then you could potentially end up looking for those buying opportunities at that point in time. But remember, this also being a yen. Remember, like I pointed out, the yens are showing a lot of weakness. If the market doesn't give us the pullbacks coming back in within these regions, then I guess it's just a matter of waiting to see if we can clear this region to the upside. On the pullback, try and see if you can get that buying opportunity to continue moving up higher on this one. So also make sure to watch out for correlation. Of course, the yen pairs normally have some good correlation most of the time, and especially right now, considering the fact that they're all showing weakness. If you look at all the yen pairs, all of them are literally moving up, quite fast. So make sure that if you do get some good buying opportunities on them, maybe even you could hang on to them. Those trades could potentially end up paying you off quite well. Just holding on to that trade for a number of days, maybe even a number of weeks. So if you get a good trade, just make sure that you do hang on to it, maybe even just manage as the market just continues to pay you. So that's pretty much it for the euro pairs. So we're going to look at the USD pairs, which are going to be the last set of currency pairs. So we're going to mix and match up the US dollar with everything on the sell side. So the first one is the US dollar against the Swiss franc. So for this one, yesterday and today, looking for buying opportunities. So you can see in the morning at around 9:10, yesterday price was somewhere within here. Not really a good time to look for your buys, and you clearly can't see why now. And the market came back in within here. You can see that during the US session, the market really attempted to push to the upside, but just couldn't move. And of course, remember, like I pointed out, the Swiss franc, like the big boys have not really started dumping the Swiss franc. So you can see that this one, just like we looked at the other Swiss franc pairs, has not really moved. So yesterday, the market was just pretty much stuck within this region right here. So let's hope and see that hopefully today the market could potentially end up pushing itself, hopefully within of this area right here to the upside. Maybe the market needs to spike, maybe just to incite, some more sellers to come in before the market actually makes a move. But ideally, of course, it's within a good area. If you end up hitting the buy here, of course, you could have your stops within this region right here. So let's say if you take the buy there, the best area for you to have your stops is somewhere within here. And you see that's only about 6 pips or thereabout. So that by the time the market comes in within here, it's not really that much. Most CHF pairs, actually, the pips actually end up being very, very small. So you can set this one just to get 18 pips, and you get your 1 is to 2.61, which is not too bad. But also on the other hand, if the market does end up spiking within here, let's say you attempt this trade and the market just doesn't end up lifting. If the market comes down and then comes back to the upside, and hopefully the buyers will end up showing up, especially that move pushing the market back to the upside of this region and the market holds within here, then at that point in time, if you end up taking that buy, then ideally I think that trade might be a winner. And you could potentially even find that maybe that trade could potentially even end up going further, than this region right here. So let's wait and see what happens. Of course, this one is a bit of a risky trade, but considering the fact that the market is within a buyer's region, and we're just about to get into the London market open, we could potentially find the market lifting. The only problem that we have is that we haven't quite yet seen, a move of the big boys in terms of the buyers coming in. So for that reason, and that only reason, you could potentially end up running the risk of just getting stopped out before the market ends up making a move. Because maybe, by you taking that trade, you're jumping ahead of the big boy, which is not what you should be doing. But again, like I pointed out yesterday, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. And that's a principle that us guys always go by. Sometimes opportunities don't really look like they'll end up moving. You don't end up taking them, and they actually end up really moving. So far, you're left there wondering, if I had only taken the risk. And of course, when it comes to trading, it's calculated risk. It's not a matter of putting everything, on the trade. Put your house, your car, your kids, and everything on the trade. It's just a matter of making sure that you're taking those calculated risks. And for as long as you end up doing that, you should be fine. Sometimes it's worth taking the risk. So just make sure that you have that at the back of your mind. But of course, if you jump ahead of the big boys, sometimes you will get stopped out, before the market actually ends up making a move. But sometimes, you end up paying those prices. That's the cost of doing business, when it comes to trading. So looking at the next one, this is the US dollar against the Canadian dollar. So for this one, yesterday, we're trying to see whether we could have gotten buys. And in the morning, price was somewhere within this region right here. We wanted to see if the market could have come back in, just slightly within this area. In fact, this one, similar illustration to what I pointed out right now, where we're expecting maybe the market was possibly just going to come back in within this region for us to look for the buys. But unfortunately, you can see that this one ran to the upside. Top of the range came back down within this region. If you attempted this trade much later on, then it must be very frustrating. You can see that the market is just not moving, with off this region right here. So for this one, moving into today, of course, we're still in a range. The levels are more or less the same. So make sure that you do end up taking note of these three regions right here. And of course, remember, if the market doesn't end up taking off from within here, because right now, the way the buyers look like they're struggling, there's a possibility it could spike. Remember that yesterday we were expecting maybe we could have gotten the spike coming in, but unfortunately that didn't happen. So there's a possibility, if the buyers really want a better price to really end up inciting the sellers so that they can really push the market, there's a possibility the spike that we were anticipating yesterday could potentially end up happening today. So just make sure that you do watch out for that. And of course, remember the red SNR at the bottom, in case the market does end up coming back in all the way to within here, just to incite more sellers to come in so that the buyers can really start to push the market. Just make sure that you're really watching out for this region at the bottom right here. But so far, we're in a range. Of course, the best buying opportunities down within this region right here. There's a minus SNR within this area right here. I mean, if you got the buys down here, and the market has come back within here, if you end up really getting issues breaking this region to the upside, then it means that those sellers are still sitting within this region. And for that reason, it's better off for you to actually end up managing your trade and wait and see what happens. If the market breaks to the upside, if you're really good at trading, then you could potentially end up looking for another opportunity, to the upside of this region right here. Reading the story, maybe you will need to read it on the smaller time frame, the 3-minute and the 1-minute time frame, so that you end up getting some proper stop losses or some tight stops, so that the risk to reward of this region coming up till within this area at the top actually ends up making sense. So just make sure that you watch out for that. And of course, in case you don't see anything happening during the London session, then just wait and see what happens maybe during the US session from around 3-4:30. So looking at the next one, this is the New Zealand dollar against the US dollar. So for this one, yesterday, we were watching out for selling opportunities. You can see the three regions right there that I have pointed out. And if we just go back to the times, or a time like this yesterday, so at around 9:10, Price was somewhere within here. We were hoping price would have come back in within there. It did, came back down within this region, bounced to the upside. You can see at 430, price was back in within this region. Gave a really good sell, at that time. And you can see that the buyers really struggled to push to the upside. And once again, you can see that once the interest rate decisions for the New Zealand dollar came out, you can see that that's when the market really did break this region to the downside quite aggressively. So for this one, we're going to be watching out to see whether we can get selling opportunities. So watch out for these three regions right here. So we do have the conservative region at the bottom. You see, I can zoom in so that it's a bit more clearer for guys. So do watch out for those three areas right there. This one has come back in within this region, but don't chase the sells. Like right now where the price is, I don't think it's best for you to look for the sells there because, your stops would still have to be here. The risk to reward coming down might not really be worth it. At least try and get the price coming back in, as close as possible within this region. If that happens, then ideally the risk to reward coming down might actually end up being much, much better. So at least if you get the trades, coming back in within here, even if you have your stops within there, at that point in time, it's worth taking the risk because you stand to gain more, if the market moves in your favor. So watch out for that. Also watch out for this region at the top right here. If I go up a higher time frame, what you'll end up seeing is that the market broke that region to the downside quite aggressively. And of course, very many people are chasing the sells right now. Consider the market came back in within a region where we do have some buyers. The buyers are retaliating. So you can see even that green candle pushing the market back to the upside. So you could find that maybe even the market might still come back in within here before the market gives another good sell. So just make sure that you also do keep an eye out for that. If the market breaks above here, of course, you still could potentially end up getting some selling opportunities, but those ones are extremely aggressive. Unless you're highly experienced on the charts, I would possibly end up advising that you either wait for the market if it goes to the upside. So let's say if the market for some reason comes back in all the way to within here and maybe even breaks this region to the upside, maybe looking for prices within this region. Of course, you could look for the selling opportunities within there for the guys who are highly skilled. But for the guys who are not highly skilled, if the market does something like that, instead of looking for that trade or the selling opportunity within this region, you're safer looking for the trade somewhere within this area right here. So, of course, do options, but of course, you know yourselves best. So, pick the one that's based on your experience. So, looking at the next one and the second last currency pair, this is the Great British Pound against the US dollar. So, for this one yesterday, we were watching out for selling opportunities. And you can see the three regions that I had pointed out in the morning when we're looking at the chart. Price was somewhere within this area right here. And I had pointed out that we're possibly expecting to get the market coming back in within here for us to look for the sells. And you can see that the market came back in within that region, came down, pulled back in within here. And if you end up looking at the times at exactly 4:30. And this is the reason why we keep on pointing out, being patient, when it comes to the charts is very key. You can imagine guys who are hitting sells when the market was down here and they were freaking out because they missed out on the sells within here and they were chasing. I don't think they really had a good time on the charts yesterday. So you can see that they hit the sell within this region where we do have a buyer's region. And it's always very important, to always watch out for it, especially where you're looking for your buying and selling opportunities. You increase the chances, of your trades working out if you take them within the right areas. And you can see just waiting. 4:30, the market was back in within there. You can see that the market really gave a really good sell. After it attempted to go to the upside, came back in. In fact, it did more or less what I had illustrated, within this illustration right here, and the market came to the downside. So for this one for today, we're going to be waiting to see whether we can get some proper selling opportunities. So do watch out for these three areas right here. So let's see if we can either get the big boy sellers showing up. Right now, you can see that the market just broke this region to the downside. Right now, it's attempting to push to the upside. If the market does end up pushing the market to the downside, and let's say we see that aggression, of the sellers, and hopefully that might end up being a sign that these sellers who push the market to the downside are possibly back in the game. If we end up getting the market coming back in within this region right here, then at that point in time, you could look for yourself, somewhere within this area right here. So just make sure that you have that in mind. This is ideally what the game plan should be. Right now, considering the fact that the market has just come back to the upside rather, this region, it seems like it's holding. We don't know whether the buyers are going to push the market to the upside. It's always best to trade on what you can see. You can visually see that the market has come back to the upside of this area. give these buyers the benefit of doubt, because you could find that maybe during the London session, they could push the market back in, within this region, right? And you could find that maybe at around 3, 4:30, similar situation to what happened yesterday. Price is back in within there for another sell, maybe to come back in within this region, just like it did yesterday, or maybe even end up going much, much lower, all the way to within here. Just need to manage. So just watch out that. But remember also the red SNR at the top, in case the market does end up coming back in within there. That's the last area where we're going to be trying to see whether we can get our last selling opportunities. If it breaks above that, then unfortunately that currency pair is off our case for today. Maybe wait and see if the market could break to the downside of that region for you to look for yourselves. But the good thing about it is you don't really need to force any opportunities on any one currency pair. There are so many options that we're looking at and so many options that we give guys every day. So if a certain currency pair is not really giving you what you want to see, you can always look for opportunities elsewhere. But if you're patient enough, because I know that there are also other guys who trade one thing, like if it's silver, it's silver. If it's GBP USD or if it's gold, then I guess you really need to end up practicing a lot of patience in terms of waiting for the setup. If you're looking for one thing. But of course, if you're looking at quite a number, just pick the ones that look like, they're following the plan based on the things that we've discussed here. And of course, also based on the trading plan that you do have. Because remember, it's also important for you to have a trading plan. So looking at the last thing, this is the US dollar against the Japanese yen. So for this one, yesterday, we were trying to see whether we could have gotten some buys. And you can see the 3 regions right there that I had pointed out. So in the morning, price was somewhere within this region. I had pointed out that it's best to wait for the price to break to the upside. If it holds above here, you could look for the buy. And look at that. That's exactly what the market did. Of course, there was this region right here that we did expect maybe price was going to come back in. But remember, we pointed out if the buyers do end up showing up and they hold the market within here, then ideally you could look for your buying opportunities. And you can see that at exactly 4:30, that's when the market took to the upside. So the buyers pushed the market above this region, held. You hit the buys there. Even if you wanted to be conservative and had your stops here, then I guess that trade did pay off. If you wanted to be a bit more aggressive, maybe having your stops within here, just be a bit more of a cowboy, then definitely the risk to reward ended up being even much, much better. But of course, you did need to manage your trade within that region right there. Can see that the market broke to the upside, attempted to seem like it was going to come back to the downside, but ideally the buyers have held it. Consider during the Asian session, the market has pushed up. So do watch out for these 3 areas right here. These are the 3 areas that we're going to be watching out for today. Don't look for your buying opportunities right now. That's a horrible idea. You could find that the sellers within that area could literally end up taking you out quite fast, and you could find the market coming back in, maybe somewhere till within this region right here, or maybe till somewhere within here. So just make sure that you do watch out for that. But there's also high probability that the market could break to the upside. Remember, like I pointed out, the yen pairs are showing a lot of weakness. In fact, for this one, I think if we end up going up, I think to the monthly, what you'll end up realizing is this one has been coming down for the longest time. In fact, we were looking at this one with the team earlier, and we found some very interesting facts. Of course, can't see that back within this region, there is no data. It's back in the dinosaur age. So from around 1971, all the way coming down till 1995, which is about 29 years or so, the market was just coming down. And you can see that the market has been holding within this region right here for the buyers, really trying to get that strength. It's taken them 24 years, from 1995 all the way till right now, breaking above this region. It's taken them 24 years. So you can imagine 29 years coming down, 24 rolling back. Maybe it might take another 29 years, to go back up. So interesting times. So just make sure, but of course, you're within some sort of resistance area. But of course, that's on the monthly. It shouldn't really bother you that much. But ideally, just some interesting things that you just end up noting on the charts when you end up looking at them. But let's ideally keep our eyes on the ball. We're trying to see whether we can get the buys. Of course, if we get the buy now and we want to hold on for the next 29 years, the good book says a good man keeps a treasure for his children's children. If you want to take that trade and hold for 29 years, then that's also perfectly fine. Just make sure that you do manage that trade quite well and show the ones who are going to be taking over, from you how to manage those trades as well. So that's pretty much it for the currency pairs. So we can end up looking at the commodities and the indices. So you can see that even for those ones, there isn't much of a change. So we're going to start off by looking at the NAS 100. So for this one, yesterday, we're trying to see whether we could have gotten some buys. And you can see the three regions right there that I had pointed out. And in the morning when we're looking at the charts, price was somewhere within this region right here. So I had pointed out, it's not really a good time for you to look for your buying opportunity unless the market broke to the upside. And you can see that the market really held within there, came back down. This was during the US session, came down. Unfortunately, there was nothing to tell us to look for the buys within here. And you can see that the market just spiked within this region quite fast before moving to the upside. Sometimes that happens on the charts, when you really wait for an opportunity, and it comes in, either it comes in fast, either comes in within a region or at a time when you're not really on the charts and you find that the market tapped within that area and went to the upside. But it's okay. Regardless, you should never be chasing. So for this one, let's wait and see what happens. On this one, it seems like the market is backing within the same price it was yesterday at a time like now. So it's done a full cycle. But the levels are the same. Let's see if we can get the market coming back in this region right here before we end up getting some good buying opportunities. Somewhere within this region right here, but also watch out for this area. If we break to the upside, then ideally we could potentially end up getting some good buys within this region. But considering the fact that the market spiked, beneath this region to the downside, hopefully this will end up inciting, a lot of sellers to come in. And maybe the market just taps back within this region. And let's really keep our fingers crossed, because if that happens, then there's a possibility you could find that the market could break above this region to the upside. Maybe due to that incitement, that happened for the sellers right there. So let's just wait and see. But remember that the red SNR, in case the market breaks that region to the downside, then at that point in time, the buys are off. But if you do get the confirmation that the market is holding, to the downside of that red SNR, then you could start to look for those selling opportunities. So moving on into the next one, this is the Dow Jones, the US start. So for this one, we're watching out for buying opportunities as well. And you can see the three regions that I had pointed out. And in the morning, when we're looking at the chart, price was somewhere within this region right here. So at around 9-10, wasn't a good time to look for the buys. Clearly can't see that the sellers within this region would have reacted, and they did. Unfortunately, the market broke to the downside. There was no hold or nothing to tell us to look for the buys there. The market came down almost somewhere as close as possible within here. We had figured maybe it could, but you can see that the market went to the upside, came back in, held within here. Unless you are reading this maybe on a smaller time frame to look for the buys, and you can see that off this region right here, the market pushed itself off that region to the upside, giving a really good buy. So right now the market is back in within this region right here. So let's see if we can get the market possibly making a move, off this area right here to the upside. If that does end up happening, then that would be good. Of course, watch out for maybe the US session. If you can't get the market moving during the London session, then just wait for the US session. Just be a bit patient. Maybe the US big boys are the ones who are going to get this market moving. So just make sure that you watch out for that, and of course be patient. This one is also a good example of, you can imagine guys who are hitting buys up here and they were chasing. You can see that the market just came back in within here. I mean, someone who was timing a buy here and you missed out on it, and out of FOMO you hit the buy up there. Clearly that was not really the best choice. But as we always say, it comes to trading, it's two things. Every trade you take, you either learn from it if you end up taking a loss, or you end up earning, if you end up making money. So it's always one of the two. So you either earn or you learn. So of course, if you end up taking a loss, make sure that you always learn from there as much as possible. Also, you can still end up learning even from the trades that you still end up making some money and earning some money out of them. Because if you do learn, the habits that give you money, and the trade setups that give you money, learn from them and make sure that you do them as much as possible so that you can always earn. So moving on into the second last thing. So this is silver. Now for silver yesterday, the bias was to look for buying opportunities. Although this one and gold were in a bit of a tricky situation. So for this one yesterday, we were trying to see whether we could get buys, but for gold rather, we're trying to see whether we could have gotten sells. But I had pointed out that for this one, we did need to see the buyers possibly come up to the upside. And if they did actually end up holding the market above here to the upside, maybe you could have looked for those buying opportunities. But we were well aware of this seller who had shown up the day before. And you can see that the market spiked to the downside, came back up, couldn't hold, and you can see that the market came to the downside. And I guess this is the trade that Brazil did actually end up capitalizing on, coming down off that region to the downside back within this region. So for this one, the plan is the same. the market hasn't really moved far and beyond the areas that we had pointed out yesterday. So we'll be trying to see if we can potentially end up getting the buys back within this region. And you can see that the market came back in within this region right here before pushing off this region to the upside. So we'll be waiting to see if we can get the market coming back in, hopefully somewhat close as possible within here. But if not, then I guess we'll have to wait and see if we can get the market breaking to the upside. So something similar to what we did end up having yesterday. So if the market does actually end up breaking, to the upside of this region right here, then we could potentially end up trying to see if we could potentially end up getting those buying opportunities. So we do need to see the aggression, of the buyer coming up within this region. Don't really look for the buying opportunities right now, because generally this is a region where you can see that the sellers have reacted off from before. So even if you really try and get in on those quick buys, it might not really end up being the best of ideas. You're better off just waiting to see if the buyers can literally clear this region to the upside. If they can do that and the market actually sustains above this region, then you could look for the buying opportunities at that point. So just make sure that you watch out for that. But also remember the red SNR, in case the market breaks that region to the downside, then that means that at that point in time, we could start to look for those selling opportunities. Of course, once we get the confirmation, not the first candle that breaks and immediately start to jump in on selling opportunities. You do need to wait and see that you get that confirmation. So last but not least, we do have gold. Now for gold, yesterday, the back was to try and see whether we could have gotten some selling opportunities. And you can see the three areas that I had pointed out. In the morning, when I'm looking at the charts, price was somewhere within here. I thought around 9, 10, price was coming down. And you can see that the sellers during the London session really struggled, pushed back in within this region. This was during the US session. And you can see that from around 4:30, that's when the market came back in within here to really give that quick sell, come back in within this region, bounced off this area quite fast. And of course, you didn't need to manage your trade within here. In case you did not, then unfortunately, you can see that the market came back in all the way till your entry. So for this one, of course, the market did end up making a move, just like we've seen also like on silver. But since the market has not really moved far and beyond, the levels are more or less the same. So we'll be watching out for the same things. Right now, the market is pushing itself off this region to the upside. Let's see if we can get the market coming back in somewhere as close as possible within that region, maybe during the US session. And of course, if that happens, then you could potentially find these sellers pushing the market down aggressively, just like they did on Monday. So let's wait and see whether that can happen. Of course, remember, if the market breaks above and holds above that region to the upside, then unfortunately, at that point in time, the sells will be off. But the good thing about it is the buys could be on, depending on if we get the confirmation that the market is actually holding above this region to the upside. So I guess that's pretty much it in terms of everything. For the guys who came in late, feel free to take a screenshot of that. And let's look at the Q&A and see if there are any questions. So I see Alan Ronald there is saying, hi, John. Thanks a lot. Karibu sana, Alan. Always good to see you here. And I'm not seeing any more questions, which is perfectly fine. I guess everything is clear. But also remember, in case anything is not too clear, the good thing about it is nowadays, at least the recordings are there on YouTube. And I can see that also there are very many guys who are following on YouTube, Facebook, also on Telegram. You can see quite a number of guys as well. So at least the recordings and everything are out there on YouTube. So feel free to make sure that you do end up watching again. Of course, the good thing about the recording, you can definitely end up with speeding up, the speed, so that at least if you want to watch it faster, it's still fine. At least you have that option. So I see Esther Kabiro there. You're saying, hi, please, you want to see gold. So for gold, the levels are the same, but ideally we're waiting to see whether we can get, hopefully the market coming back in within this region right here. You can see that the bars are really pushing off this region quite aggressively. So let's see if we can get the market coming back in within that. But we also could find that the market could easily turn within this region. If that happens and it comes back into the downside of this region quite aggressively and holds within here, then at that point in time, you could also look for yourselves somewhere within here. But right now, since the buyers are pushing, let's see if we can get the market somewhere within here, maybe at around 4:30. So I hope that is clear for you, Esther Kabiro, but also always happy to see you here. So I guess that's pretty much it from me and from Max. I guess we'll see you guys tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. in the morning. Yeah, so I see yesterday saying good. All right, all right. So yeah, I guess we'll see you guys tomorrow morning. If you get any trades, feel free to send them in to us. Contact details should be there on the chat box. Feel free to send them in to us via WhatsApp. So with that, happy trading and bye for now. May the peace be with you. God bless.